Hello and welcome to What the Hey, where I'm your regular host of What the Hey, and today in What the Hey, I'm once again reacting to yet another requested video. Today's video request comes from like a bunch of different people, so I'm gonna have pictures, I think, of all the different requests, and then also have the names of the people who requested the video in the description, so thank you to all of you for requesting this video. If I happen to miss putting your request in the pictures or your name in the description, I'll be double checking on that. I'm going through the comments in my channel, the ones that I haven't responded to yet, and I tried to go back like as far as I could to make sure I included everyone. But if that happened, I'll be sure to put your username in the description. But thank you to everyone who requested this video because I'm super psyched to get to it. But the video in question that I'm checking out today is titled The Entire Railway Series Timeline, Every Major Event from 1806 to 2020, which was uploaded on March 12th of 2021. The video duration is 32 minutes and 18 seconds, and the video description gives timestamps for music as well as events in the video. The video itself was uploaded by the Unlucky Tug, so thank you to you for creating and uploading your content. Like with all of my reaction videos, if there's something in this video that I feel may disturb someone to some degree, I'll be sure to mention that in the video description, so feel free to check that out before watching the rest of the video. So with all of that out of the way, let's actually get to watching the video itself.
So I took it upon myself recently to compile all the illustrations in every Railway Series book from the 2015 Complete Collection box set, which has the most up-to-date, clearest digital scans of the
illustrations
original artwork
in the old books are so fantastic.
Seriously, look at the details here. You can see the pencil marks. I use Railway Series illustrations in almost every video I make. So I wanted to make myself an archive of them, all in
They look like grapes,
quality.
hello?
So naturally, I've become very inspired by the Railway series lately, and wanted to do something fun with these illustrations.
Of course, why would you not?
I decided to put together this video outlining the entire chronological timeline of the Railway series, from the early 19th century all the way to present day, correctly outlining all of the history and lore that Reverend Wilbur Audrey laid out for us to discover. I've never seen anyone do this before in video format, and I wanted to create a source of truth for anyone interested in the lore of the series. As much as we love stories like when Thomas went fishing, or when Birdie chased Edward, I don't think it really matters if we know what years those happened, right? So, here we go. Starting at the beginning of the 19th century.
Goes back that far? Is Sodor an actual place?
Our story begins in 1806 with the formation of the first ever railway on the island of Sodor.
Because I wouldn't know.
A horse-worked plateway from the harbor at Balladwale to a copper mine in the foothills of Ward Fell, simply called the Railroad. Slate would be discovered in the hills later that would also be mined. For almost 50 years, this was the only rail-powered network on Sodor. The government passes the act to build a standard gauge line called the Sodor and Mainland Railway from BALLO to Rolf's Castle, with intentions to extend north to the mainland. 3 engines were ordered and came to help build the railway, one of which was named Neil. Eventually, the railway was extended south to the harbor at Kirk
of these names
to
sound really
slate
familiar.
And ore from the railroad and other materials. Improvements to the railroad began, and the plateway is pulled up and replaced with rails for steam engines.
Isn't the island of Sodor like a mining place? Yeah, it looks like it.
The new railway was named the Skarloey Railway. The Skarloey orders 2 engines. Both are built in Whitehaven in England. The first engine and railway's namesake Skarloey arrived on a ship the next year at Kirk Ronan. Neil helped unload him.
Thank you, Neil.
In September that year, the second engine, Rheneas, arrived. 2 years later, Skarloey was rebuilt at Whitehaven with an added pony truck and an enclosed cab. Rheneas would later follow suit. Over the course of the next decades, other standard gauge railways across the island started to emerge. The Wellsworth and Sudbury Railway was constructed, which ran from Wellsworth to the wharf at Sudbury. It employed a fleet of 4060
Nice. I love the combination of
a second narrow gauge
the illustrations and the actual photos
from the harbor at Arlesborough to the mines west of Peel Godred. The railway was called the Mid-Sodor, and its fleet contained several engines, including its first one called Duke. Other engines would arrive later. A third standard gauge railway called the Elsbridge and Knapford Railway is constructed to serve the lead mine at Tory Wreck.
Tory Wreck, I'm remembering more of these.
Called coffee pots.
They do look like coffee pots.
A rack railway was constructed to climb to the top of Cody Fell, Sodor's largest mountain. The railway purchased 5 special angled boiler engines from Switzerland
Why
to run
would
the
they
line,
be angled?
one of
I
which
don't
was
know.
named Cody. The railway, aptly called the Coley Fell Mountain Railway, would open for service the next year. And with that, we are now in the 20th century.
I love the music transitions.
The Coldy Fell trialed Coldy for service in March, and the line was approved for opening. The railway opened for passengers in May. About a month later, the railway's first engine, Godred, suffered a horrible accident when he derailed and tumbled down the mountainside. He was scrapped, and the railway was forever left without its number 1.
That's fantastic.
During the first 15 years of the 20th century, several developments occur on the standard gauge railways. The Wellsworth and Sudbury extended south to Brendam. The Mid-Sodor attains a new engine named Falcon. On Falcon's first run up the mountain with Duke, he derails and nearly falls to his death. Duke
Why are there
like
so many falls and crashes?
The harbor at Knapford requires frequent maintenance and becomes unaffordable to upkeep. It is eventually abandoned, and work on a new line built along the headland begins later to the much bigger harbor north at Tidmouth.
Oh, that's scary.
A storm destroys the track on the headlands, so the railway
Does that actually happen?
to build
I'm
a new
guessing
track
so.
through a tunnel to reach Tidmouth. In 1910, the tunnel is completed and the line finally extends north to Tidmouth, and the railway is renamed the Tidmouth, Knapford, and Elsbridge Light Railway.
Nice.
You confused?
Yes.
Good, me too. The Light Railway and the Wellsworth and Sudbury amalgamate and become one railway, the Tidmouth, Wellsworth, and Sudbury Railway, erecting a middle station at Crosby. The tracks to Elsbridge become the Elsbridge Branch, and a junction station for it is constructed at Knapford, south of the river. In 1914, all of the standard gauge railways on Sodor finally converge and become one big railway that spans the whole island, the Northwestern Railway. The tracks of the Wellsworth and Sudbury become the Brendam Branch. Topham Hatt the First becomes the railway's director, as known in this period, the Fat Director.
I only thought there was
Work
one.
begins the following year to connect all the tracks. Later that same year, a little tank engine from Brighton somehow finds his way to Sodor during the war efforts. The engine's name is Thomas. He stayed to help Edward with the railway's construction. Together, Thomas and Edward build the line. Once the line was completed, Thomas was kept at the new terminus at Vickerstown to shunt trains. 2 other branch lines are constructed during this period. One is built on the east of Sodor from Ballyhoo to the seaside holiday town of Normanby. Another went north of Tidmouth up to Arlesborough, where it shared the harbor with the Mid-Sodor Railway. While the line was built for wartime strategy purposes, it eventually saw use as a means of transporting goods from the Mid-Sodor and the harbor. Thomas is officially purchased by the Northwestern,
I like the difference in art styles, it's interesting.
Engine. Edward is purchased from the Furness later that year and becomes the railway's second engine. On the Mid-Sodor Railway, another little engine called Stuart is built and arrives. He arrives at the Mid-Sodor via traction engine. Later that year, Henry refused to work because of bad weather and shut himself up in a tunnel, refusing to move. Frustrated with trying to make him cooperate, the Fat Director walled up the tunnel and left Henry there. Henry's absence and his poor performance led to the purchase of another big engine the next year.
It's gotta be
Gordon. A
Gordon.
new A1 Pacific from the London and Northeastern Railway called Gordon.
He's always been so annoying to me. I don't know.
Delegated express engine. The Peel Godred Electric Company constructs a hydroelectric station in Peel Godred utilizing the water of the 3
So all of this is actually legit
lakes.
stuff?
Their bulky equipment is too large to fit the line clearances on the Mid-Sodor, so a standard gauge line was needed. The power company struck a deal with the Northwestern to construct a branch line from Kildane up to it. Thomas, meanwhile, finds working as a station pilot boring and longs for something more. He gets his chance one day when he and Edward swap jobs, and he takes Edward's goods train to Wellsworth. He has some difficulties with it, but he does get it there. Once at Wellsworth, the Fat Director allowed Thomas to relocate there for a while to work with Edward. Thomas's promotion from pilot duties at Vickerstown coincided with a deal struck by the Northwestern and the LMS that year. The Northwestern allowed the LMS to run services to Normanby if the Northwestern could run their services to the mainland.
Is the white section England? I'm guessing it is.
East to Barrow-in-Furness via the bridge over the Walney Channel, making Vickerstown no longer the line's terminus. The railway's official terminus was moved to the west of the island at Tidmouth. Sometime later, the railway's 5th engine, James, rushes through Wellsworth with a runaway train and derails. Thomas acts quickly with the breakdown train and rescues him. His
Maybe
act
it's
of
a
bravery
difference
proves
in
himself
the
a useful
book.
engine. The decision to
Farquaad.
move Thomas to this line coincided with the branch line extending from Elsbridge to Farquhar earlier that
It's
year
actually
to serve
Farquaad.
the quarry. With the branch line now double its length, the coffee pot engines, which were amazingly still in service at this point, couldn't run the whole length, and a bigger engine was needed. James returned from the works
In
later
red.
that year
Okay,
following his
cool.
accident, and the
Yeah.
Fat Director gave him a
That's what I
special
thought.
red paint job. James piloted for a short while at the New Titmus station upon his return, but was soon allowed to pull his own trains after proving himself. The Fat Director acts accordingly, and brings a small saddle tank to the railway to help
Percy?
out. The engine is named Percy,
Yes.
and becomes the railway's 6th engine. On the Mid-Sodor, a series of several accidents results in its second engine, Stanley, being broken up and turned into a stationary pumping
Is that
engine
not
behind
horrible?
the shed, much to Falcon and Stewart's
Yeah,
horror.
that's horrible.
Henry's steaming problems continue
That's
to
scary.
occur, and the Fat Director grows fed up trying to fix him. He brings in special Welsh coal for him to use.
Gotta
which proves
have,
to be
like,
successful.
special treatment.
However, early in the next year, Henry is assigned to pulling the Flying Kipper,
Why do I
a
know that?
non-stop fish train to Manchester. Iced over points
know that.
cause him
I don't
to
know
crash
why.
into a goods train, damaging him horribly. Meanwhile, on the mainland over in East
Is that
Anglia,
Toby?
a tram engine called Toby works with
Oh,
his
yay.
brothers transporting goods
I think
along
he's
their
my
little
favorite
line,
for some
the
reason. I
Wisbeach
don't know
and
why.
Upwell Tramway. Toby works on his own sect of the line
So
with
happy.
his coach,
Just so happy.
Henrietta.
1940s, here we go. Do 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 do.
World War II occurs, and
Oof.
few major events occur on the
You
island
would think
of Sodor
so,
during
'cause
the
it's
war
horrible.
efforts. While it is never documented in any of Audrey's writings, Barrow in Furness was bombed by Germany in what is now called the Barrow Blitz. On the mainland, the first book of the Railway series is published, written by a
Mr.
clergyman
Audrey?
and Sodor historian named
So
Wilbert Audrey.
Sodor's
First
an
four
actual
stories are
place?
based
That's
on Edward
interesting.
Henry and Gordon's adventures
I had
in
no idea.
1923 that he had read about. The series proves to be very successful. The Mid-Sodor Railway also starts to suffer as its mines dry
So
up
it's a
and close
mining,
down
like,
one by
area.
one.
Okay.
The Mid-Sodor Railway officially closes, and its remaining engines are auctioned off to the highest bidders. Falcon and Stewart are sold off to the aluminum works at Peel Godred, while Duke is tarped up and left in a
That's
shed,
horrible.
abandoned. With
Just
the
to
closure
be, like,
of the
left there?
Mid-Sodor, the
Okay.
Arlesborough branch and harbor saw no more traffic and were subsequently closed. That winter, Thomas purposely damages his
On
snowplow
purpose?
and gets caught in a snowdrift without it.
Why would you
Jarrett's
wanna do that
tractor
on
pulls him to
purpose?
safety. I legitimately hate this because this implies that the first time Thomas saw snow on his branch line was 20 years after he started running it. What, did it not snow on Sodor in those 20 years? Oh wait, yes it did. What the actual hell were you thinking here, Audrey? All the big four railways on the mainland joined forces and formed the national network, British Railways, making the Northwestern
That's
Railway
cool. I love
officially
the combination
Northwestern
of, like,
region
actual
of British Railways.
pictures and
During
stuff like
this
this.
change, the Fat Director receives his baronetcy for services to railways
Nice.
and becomes chairman of
How
the
does he
regional
have
executive,
hair?
thus gaining the title Sir and his nickname changed to the Fat Controller.
1950s, let's get
The
it.
50s was a big decade in terms of events for the island of Sodor. The Fat Controller decides to take his family on holiday to East Anglia, where they meet Toby. The Fat
Nice.
Controller and the children take a liking to him.
'Cause he's cool.
Toby's line is slowly approaching closure, and finally does close later that
Sad.
year. Around the same time, not long after, Thomas
looks
gets
so
into trouble with a
surprised.
policeman. Thomas is not allowed to travel on the tramway to the quarry on his branch line without covered wheels, meaning that a tram engine would be
Why?
needed for the services. The Fat Controller remembers Toby, writes to his controller, and purchases him from British Railways. Toby and his coach Henrietta arrive shortly after. Toby becomes the Northwestern's 7th engine, and is later repainted into a chocolate brown livery
I don't
with blue
remember
side
that, but
plates.
okay.
Back on the Skarloey, Rheneas finally kicks the bucket after
Ooh.
breaking down en route with a passenger train. He manages to get the train home, but is in need of a total overhaul. The railway brings on 2 new engines to take over. The engines are Falcon and Stewart from the Mid-Sodor, whom were sold off to the aluminum company in Peel Godred 4 years prior. That Christmas, a landslide occurs on Thomas's branch line. An old lady named Mrs. Kindly, who lives in a cottage close to the line, flags
She's so
Thomas down
kind.
and prevents a collision. She is thanked by the Fat
Merry
Controller
Christmas.
personally on Christmas Day. Sometime that year, before Edward left for his overhaul, Gordon refused to pull a goods train and ran himself off the turntable into a ditch,
Sensible.
resulting
Are
in
those
the
frogs?
express being taken away
Yes,
from him.
yes, they are.
He made up for it later on when he rescued a careless Thomas who fell down an old mine at Torrywreck. That year, the main engine sheds at Tidmouth were extensively rebuilt as a roundhouse with an indoor turntable. The old four-road shed remained, with the new roundhouse situated behind it. That Christmas, the Fat Controller holds a big celebration at the new roundhouse for Mrs. Kindly, as a thank you for her act of heroism the year before. The newly crowned Queen Elizabeth II travels around all of Britain's regions and pays her visit to the island of Sodor. Gordon is chosen to haul the royal train. Sir Topham Hatt I retires,
so there's
and his son Charles Topham Hatt becomes the Fat Controller. One of his first acts as controller is to reopen the abandoned harbor at Knapford. The harbor reopens for service. In the autumn, heavy rain downpours on Sodor and floods part of Thomas's line.
That's probably
Percy gets
a
caught
problem.
in the flood while bringing a passenger train home to Farquhar for Thomas. Next year, Percy brags to some British Railways engines at Barrow about his bravery in the floods, much to Henry's disdain.
Yeah,
some trucks later give Percy trouble and push him off the quay jetty at the
Why are there
harbor.
so many crashes?
Meanwhile, a mainland engine derails at Barrow, and Gordon has to step in to take its train all the way to London. The Railway series books on the mainland prove to be very popular, and the Fat Controller receives letters from children asking if his engines are real. He finally decides to take his 8 famous engines to London for a gala to show them off, and they all embark on a trip to Euston Station. Sodor sees its first celebrity visit as the famous 100 miles per hour record-breaker engine, City of Truro, arrives with a rail tour. Later on, the Fat Controller trials a new diesel shunter at Tidmouth. The diesel takes a dislike to Duck after Duck plays a trick on him.
Is that the very famous like
Diesel
10
about him.
dude?
This leads to a standoff between Duck and the big engines, and ends with Duck getting sent away to bank trains at Wellsworth for a while. A runaway train chases Duck down the hill one day, causing him to crash into a barber shop at Crosby. The Fat Controller figures Diesel out and removes him from the railway. After he is mended, Duck returns to pilot duties at Tidmouth. The Northwestern enlists the help of an engine from Scotland, and the Fat Controller is astonished when 2
Duncan
arrive.
and Douglas?
The engine's names are Donald and Douglas. The Fat Controller had bought Donald, but Douglas stowed away with him as he knew his fate was scrap if he stayed behind. After a debacle trying to decide which should be sent back, the Fat Controller trials both, and that winter, with the other engine's help, decides to keep them together. Donald and Douglas become the Northwestern's 9th and 10th engines, respectively.
1960s, here we go.
The 60s start with a literal bang as Thomas crashes into the station master's house at Farquhar. In his absence, the Fat Controller brings a brand new diesel rail car named Daisy to do his work. On his return, he meets 3 new engines brought in, including Lord Harry. Lord Harry would later rescue a climber in bad weather, and receive a name change to Patrick after the man he rescued. On the mainland, Gordon's brother, Flying Scotsman, is saved from scrap by Alan Pegler, while the rest of the siblings start being withdrawn and scrapped. On Thomas's branch line, the Farquhar Quarry acquires its own engine, a small diesel shunter called Mavis. In autumn of that year, Percy crashes into a lime cart at a farm crossing and subsequently uses his bright white appearance to spook Thomas. In June 1965, the Skarloey Railway celebrates its 100th birthday with the opening of a loop line around the lake at Skarloey. All hell breaks loose at Tidmouth when a horde of bees are broken out of a hive. One stings James on the nose. The Northwestern Railway reopens Arlesborough Harbour as a supplement to Tidmouth, and thus starts running trains up to it along the branch line again. Ballast is discovered in the waste heaps of the abandoned mines near Arlesdale. All the railway's controllers come together and build a miniature railway along the old trackbed of the now abandoned Mid-Sodor Railway to transport the ballast to the standard gauge railway. 2 clergymen visit Sodor and have encounters with some of the engines, one of which is Wilbert Awdry, the author of the Railway series books, and the other his friend Teddy Boston. Later that year, Gordon learns the fate of all his brothers on the mainland and becomes severely depressed. The Fat Controller cheers him up by bringing his only surviving brother, the famous Flying Scotsman,
Why is that so famous? I don't know.
Steam traction is officially retired on British railways, making the Northwestern the only standard gauge railway in Britain with steam engines in revenue-earning service. Peter Sam and Sir Handel won't stop talking about Duke, which incites interest from the 2 clergymen to find the old engine. The two, along with Mr. Fergus Duncan and the Duke of Sodor, search the remains of the Mid-Sodor Railway, of which the Arlesdale was built upon. Their long search comes to its end when Teddy Boston falls through the ground onto Duke in the shed he was placed in over 20 years prior. Later that year, in October, a TV adaptation of the Railway series called Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends premieres, narrated by the Beetle himself, Ringo Starr.
So cool.
Yes, the TV series does in fact exist in the Railway series universe, but only as a fictional TV show. Meanwhile, on the mainland in Gloucestershire, a saddle tank on the Dean Forest Railway is christened with the name Wilbert, after Wilbert Awdry himself. Awdry attended the naming ceremony.
The music's so interesting.
The National Railway Museum invites Thomas to come to the museum in York for a big railway gala. Thomas leaves for York under his own power. 50 years has passed since the first Railway series book, and a big celebration is held at Tidmouth for the event. A high-speed train named Pip and Emma arrive from the mainland carrying a very important person, the Prince of Wales himself, Prince Charles. Wilbert Awdry dies peacefully in his sleep. Sadly, Charles Topham Hatt also passes away this year. Stephen inherits the baronetcy and becomes Sir Topham Hatt III.
So many. Hey, I was born at this point, let's go.
As of 2005, Sir Stephen Topham Hatt is still controller of the railway at age 64. We have no confirmed date of when, but we can assume he retired at some point in this decade, and his son, Richard Hatt, becomes the Fat Controller. And finally retires Gordon from the Express after a 88-year-long career.
Yeah.
Gordon humbly accepts his retirement with honor and enjoys his new slower life, pulling occasional stopping trains. That year, the Northwestern Railway celebrates the 100th birthday of Wilbert Awdry, the man who made them famous, with the unveiling of a bust of him in Tidmouth Station. In 2020, the Railway series celebrates its 75th anniversary.
That is literally insane. 75 years.
And that brings us to current day. There are no more Railway series books and publications, so we really don't know what will happen next, if anything. But before you go, I have one final surprise for you all. I have uploaded all of the pictures featured in this video from the first 26 books publicly up on Drive. Link in the description.
Still nice.
They're not perfect HD quality or anything, but they are consistent. Feel free to do what you want with them. Put them on the wiki, use them in your own videos, do whatever you like with them.
Thank you.
They are my gift to you all. I hope you all enjoyed this video and found it informative. And once again, big thank you to Luke for all his help and contributions to this thing. Have a great day, y'all, and I will see you all in the next one.
Jazz music to finish out. Yes, yes. 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 In general, that was super, super cool. I'm an absolute sucker for history, so all of that was super fun to hear. The Unlucky Tug does such a fantastic job of including things that are important. I mean, they mentioned it in the beginning, they weren't going to add everything that happened, but like stuff that actually mattered. Although I've reacted to a bunch of like Thomas and Friends content, I'm not someone who's very familiar with like everything in the series, so that was very helpful. In the beginning of the video, it was really fun because I'm like starting to remember more of the names and characters, so it's like I'm kind of familiar with stuff. In terms of the video itself, it was really well done. The audio was really well done. If that was all one take, that was very impressive. The transitions were great, like the years presented in the video. The music for the transitions, the music in general was really nice. From what I've seen, the Unlucky Tug always does a really good job from videos that I've reacted to and videos that I've watched in my own time. Does a really good job with like picking like really good music. The visuals in the video were also really great. I liked the use of actual like real life footage and like pictures from the books. So yeah, that was super good. I understand what all the hype was about. So that's essentially the reaction video. So if you have anything that you would like for me to check out, let me know and I'll get to watching it as soon as I can. So thank you so much for watching. Bye.